wanted to continue my video. I got cut off. So a sign that someone is putting effort into a relationship is that they consider your feelings and your needs as much as they do themselves, their own, right? If you did something that maybe you failed to meet a commitment, or maybe you forgot about, a meetup that you were going to do with them, or maybe, you did something that is human of you to do, instead of coming at you and attacking you and making you wrong and shaming you and doing toxic things to you, a healthy dynamic would be like, hey, what happened? We missed you. And check in with the person to understand, why did they not show up? What happened that made you not show up to this event or whatever? And seek to understand you. That's a healthy relationship. Instead of making assumptions, she just doesn't give a shit about me or whatever, like making harsh judgmental assumptions about what the other person did, instead of having an open conversation about it, being connected through it. There's lots of differences of like what's healthy and what's not healthy, and it could be a very long video doing that. But I do want to talk about some of the key elements to recognize, because a lot of the empaths that I work with, and even myself, still get caught in relationships where they're like spinning out and looking at themselves and being like, how am I contributing to this situation in this relationship that's disharmonious, or like there's dysfunction happening? What am I doing? And like really, like empaths are super self-reflective and self-responsible, almost to the detriment of of overlooking the fact that the other person isn't being self-reflective or self-responsible. And it takes two people in a relationship, a reciprocal relationship, to be self-reflective and self-responsible for their actions, their words, and their behaviors. So for instance, if something someone says to you or about you or around you that is extremely highly offensive or upsetting to you, and they come up to you and be like, what's wrong? Usually an empath puts other people's needs first. This is where the codependency comes in. It's like you put other people's needs first over your own because it's easier to do that, and you care more about others than yourself. I mean, that's an unhealthy empath. A lot of empaths kind of start out at this place. And so they'll say, I'm fine, and they just like leave it, right? But an empowered empath, someone who's done the work, who has the self-responsibility and also desires reciprocal relationships, would say something and say, I'm just feeling a little upset when I heard you say blank. And they communicate in a way that takes self-responsibility. It's not like, you made me feel blank. You did this to me and you did this to me. That's toxic. So it's like, I'm feeling upset when I heard you say blank. And so in a healthy relationship, the other person would acknowledge what they're hearing, understand the perspective from your shoes, and take responsibility, apologize, and then change their behavior about whatever that topic is, if that's possible, right? That's what a reciprocal relationship is. It's like a reciprocal relationship cares to keep the harmony and the balance between the relationship. It's not one-sided. It's not, it's all your fault and it's not mine at all. It takes two people to see outside themselves, to see another person's perspective, to understand where they're coming from, without attacking, without blaming, and without projecting. And this is where I'm very, 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 very passionate about communication skills, about nonviolent communication specifically. What I learned in nonviolent communication, which is how do you communicate boundaries in a way where you're taking self-responsibility and you're making a request that is not pointing the finger, not including judgment, not including blame on another person. It is a wholly self-owned experience. This is what's alive in me in response to the observed thing that happened, and this is what I'm needing right now. And whether you need to meet that need for yourself or you're asking for the other person to assist you in meeting that need. And being able to communicate really, really clearly. But I can tell you, I've done all the work to learn how to communicate clearly like this. With a toxic person, it doesn't matter. They're not going to hear your request, your boundary, as a self-identified responsible thing. They're going to take it personally. They're going to explode around it. They're going to make you feel like you're too much. They're going to do lots of things that are not hearing you, that are not seeing you, that are not hearing what you need and not willing to meet you halfway to make that work for that relationship. And that is where you have a one-sided relationship. And it's unfortunate that we have a lot of adults in the world who just do not have these basic skills. The basic skills of being able to communicate, resolve conflict in a healthy way that meets both people's needs. And what I've seen time and time again is unhealthy dynamics where stuff just keeps getting swept under the rug because it's more comfortable to be silent than to speak up about it. But when you do that, when an empath does that, you are abandoning yourself. You're abandoning your needs and your feelings. And if you sweep it under the rug and it's a relationship where you're like, this isn't working and I'm just not going to see them again, fine, leave it. But if this is an ongoing relationship with the person, or this is happening time and time again, and you just keep sweeping it under the rug and being silent, energy builds up in your body. As an empath, we get physically sick when there's unhealthy relationship dynamics. We get physically sick when there's unhealthy relationship dynamics. I say that time and time again. Empaths are sensitive to all energy. And if they are making themselves small, silencing themselves for the comfortability of other people, not expressing their needs because they don't want to appear to be a burden to others, if they're doing all these unhealthy, energy constricting things, it starts to affect the physical body. And it comes to a point where empaths learn that they have to speak up, they have to ask for what they need to learn how to communicate their boundaries, they need to be able to stand up for themselves. And it's scary because in the past, maybe when they were a child, when they stood up for themselves, they may have gotten in trouble, they may have been judged harshly, and they may have had some sort of situation that made them be like, this isn't safe to do this, and so they stopped doing it. I see this more in women than men because girls, we're conditioned to not have many needs, to be really helpful, to take care of others before ourselves. And it's very, very unhealthy for women when they grow up, if they continue to live that way. So part of the empath development is learning communication, learning how to identify what's living in you energetically, being able to label it and being able to communicate that to other people when it's necessary. And when you start to be able to do that and start to really own your experience, and hopefully you're around healthy people who can really hear you and what you're conveying to them, you start to recognize that there's support all around you. And you may have felt very, very unsupported all of your life, but that's because you were silencing yourself. You weren't saying what you're really needing and feeling. When you start saying what you really need and what you really feel, you start to invite other people to participate in creating a harmonious relationship with you. And the sad but true reality is as you start to express your feelings and needs to other people, there will be apparent people who are absolutely upset that you're taking up space, that you're sharing your feelings and needs, especially if relationships that you've had for a long time where you never did that. And it'll be very clear where there's healthy relationships and where there's unhealthy relationships, because the unhealthy relationships, it'll irritate that person and they will keep trying to manipulate that relationship to be back in the one-sided dynamic that it was before, where you're useful to them, where you're present for them and their needs. And that's like codependency. It's like, if you're grown up, a lot of women are raised to be very codependent in the sense that I'm not happy unless everyone's happy. Be the good hostess, make sure everyone has everything they need, blah, blah, blah. And even if you're running around and at the end of the party, you crash and you're sick for 3 days because you expended all your energy, right? It's at the cost of yourself. It's a martyrdom. And so an empowered empath starts to understand what drains them and what fulfills their energy, and starts to make choices and decisions in a life that will help them fill themselves time and time again, and eventually start to create that interrelational bridge with other people where they can start to allow others to become the fulfillment with them in harmonious reciprocal relationships. And it's beautiful when you get to the space where you're able to communicate what you're feeling and what you're needing from a place of a full ownership, and not of fear or shame of how are they going to react, right? We get to own our experience without having to worry about their experience. We get to say no and not worry about if that angers the other person, because it's what we need. And it's not selfish. It's an invitation to the person saying, this is a boundary for me. And if we want to maintain this reciprocal relationship, help me make sure that this boundary is respected. And if it can't be respected, then I'm going to have to remove myself, and this relationship will not continue to exist, basically. And yeah, it's true, as an empath gets their voice, starts to express their boundaries, they will start to see relationships fall aside. They'll start to see the truth of how things have been operating in their life, how they've been showing up in relationships, and how there'll be a lot of grieving for what you didn't get. But as you start to process all of this and do the healing, you'll start to be able to hold space for yourself and have the right support, the right healthy relationships, and you'll find yourself being nourished and full after interactions with the right kind of people, and just realize, holy crap, this is how my life can be. My life can be this good, fulfilled. I can get my needs met. I can express myself safely. I can be received well by somebody else. I can listen to their needs. I can listen to their feelings. I can have this reciprocal relationship where we're both fed and nourished by it. And I feel seen and I feel heard, and I'm not being judged for my needs, my highly sensitive needs. And it just feels really good. I get to be all of myself in those relationships. You get to be all of yourself in these relationships. If you are contorting yourself to make other people comfortable, to not take up too much space, to not ask for too many things, then you're not being your full self in those relationships. And that has an energetic cost. I know a lot of empaths talk about how they need time alone to recharge. And I want to say that's true, maybe just energetically, but most of the time it's because they have interactions with other humans that are non-reciprocal that rob them of their energy. And then they have to go recharge. But when you surround yourself with reciprocal energy charging relationships, you'll find yourself energized to be social. And so that's the other thing, is like a lot of empaths are judged to be like not social, or I don't know, some empaths are very social. I know I was very social before, and as I've owned more of my empath nature and recognized how energy is moving through me, I'm very different. I'm very reserved about who and where I spend my energy. I used to love to like go to bars and like smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol, and now it's like I can't. The smell of cigarettes like makes me feel ill. Alcohol makes me feel ill. Loud crowds drain me of my energy. I have become a lot more sensitive since the birth of my son, and that's how I was when I was a kid. I kind of like desensitized myself in my 20s, and that's when a lot of other empaths will actually have a period in their life where they had to cope with this highly sensitive aspect of themselves, and they've learned to shut themselves down. And a lot of times they do that through substance use or alcohol to numb their emotional feelings, to numb the truth of what's going on in them, so that they can just get by day. It's unfortunate that a lot of empaths struggle with those kind of issues, just trying to cope with the reality of being an empath surrounded by people who don't get it. That's really, really common. And so once you really do the healing work to fully open up these gifts and have the coping skills that are not unhealthy, coping skills that serve you and your energy body, you'll be able to own more space, communicate your needs, and have these reciprocal relationships. It's a long process. It's a big healing journey. You know, if you're still at the place where it's like you're lost and confused and you feel like nobody around you understands you, you feel like you don't belong, you feel like you're misunderstood and judged by everybody, get into a safe, sacred space. Get some therapy. Step into my sacred spaces. I invite you to join us in these sacred spaces. I have a membership where we do development and healing stuff every single week, and with really highly empathic people who are deeply caring, who seek to understand each other, and we work with our energy body. We work with understanding how to have energetic hygiene with ourselves, to maintain our energy, to be self-generating, and set up our life in a way that makes us flourish. So let me know if you want to join that. I will leave a link in the details.